Hello, precious mamas and mamas to be. Welcome to my mind-opening interview series with important authorities in the birth world. This is your host, Ilka Bee, with the Liberated Birth Movement, broadcasting from around the world. In this interview series, we're going to once again uncover myths, ask interesting questions, and get out-of-the-box answers. All right. Welcome, precious mamas. This is Ilka Bee, and I am super happy to have on Maryn Green today from Indie Birth. And Maryn, she is, I would say, like one of the most badass moms and midwives and teachers and mentors ever. She is just like one of the most radical women I've met, and she's inspired me a whole ton. And I'm going to get into all of that. So welcome, Maryn.
Thank you, Ilka. I'm so honored to be here. It's been a couple of years since we met, and I was just thinking about that, like how cool it was that you were at our very first conference, and just staying in touch with you a little bit here and there has been fun. And now we're doing this, so even better.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think it was your first Indie Birth conference in Sedona, right? And it was in 2015 or something. I don't know, 2016.
Yeah, I think that 2016 probably. I don't know.
I was definitely led by the universe to get to that conference, and you and Margot and the Indie Birth conference literally just blew my mind. It was like I was ready to know all of what you said, but I didn't know it. So when I tell the story to other people, I always say, like, Maryn had a way to say the things that I already knew for myself to be true, but I didn't have the confidence to actually like speak them out loud. So that's what you did for me. I can tell you in a lot of ways. So, okay, tell me a little bit about people that never heard of you, Indie Birth, Maryn Green. What is your background? What's your passion? How did you get into this whole world, and how did you become like, someone that's like going a whole new direction for women in birth?
Oh, wow. Where to start? Well, first of all, I'm a mama to 8 children, or 9 actually, one that isn't here and 8 that are. And those births have, of course, changed me each time. I learned so much about myself and about what I think these deeper messages that come through are for all of us. So I'm super grateful to my children for being that light. My life wouldn't be on this track without them. So years ago, before children, I was actually a musician, and that was like a whole other life. Yeah, I was a classical musician for many years, and, lived that life. And once my second child was born, he was a home birth. He was our first home birth. And after that, my life just took a completely different turn that I never could have predicted. If somebody had said to me, 25 years ago, you won't be playing music in New York City, you'll be, home with 8 kids and attending births, I would have laughed. It would have made no sense.
Wow. So that is literally like from one end to the other. Crazy.
Totally. Yeah. It was the kind of life where you thought you might not ever have children, just because music is so demanding, and, you don't make any money and all of those things. So yeah, it was not something I planned. It was really my first home birth, and the midwife that we found kind of at the last minute in Chicago, Illinois, where we lived at the time, that changed my life. So after his birth, I remember reading all of the books. Like, I would sit there nursing him, and I had a stack, it was kind of pre-internet days in a way. So I had like a stack of books, and I just couldn't stop reading about home birth and midwifery. And I didn't want to do it. Like, my brain didn't want to do it. It seemed like really hard to start over. And I could sense that there was some intensity to this work by being around the midwife that we had hired. And so my brain didn't want to do it, but this work just calls one, I think, right? So it was that way. Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't something I feel like I had a conscious choice over. And that was, he'll be 14 in September. So it's been that long. And I started apprenticing almost right away after his birth. He was only 4 months old. And I didn't even plan on that. It was just this divine manifestation of something. I went to interview this midwife that I ended up working with. I had never met her, actually. She was a friend of my midwife, and I ended up interviewing her for like an intro midwifery course. And at the end of the interview, she just said, are you going to do this? Do you want to apprentice? I barely knew what an apprenticeship was.
Wow.
So I thought about it for a little bit and just dove in. And that was kind of the beginning of all of it. Getting to attend home births right off the bat. I never worked in a hospital or served as a doula. It just wasn't in my path to do that. And worked with her for many years before coming here to Arizona, and worked with someone else here. Those two apprenticeships were very different. I've talked a lot about those on my podcast. Just really, now at Indie Birth, we talk a lot about like the sacred and the science and the blending of what we think this can be. And my two apprenticeships, I feel like, really illustrated that for me really well.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one was really heart-based, and I just saw birth work. Like, I didn't know any better. I just saw babies be born.
Which is a good way to know.
It's a good way to know.
Right.
I say now, like, that I'm teaching more students, like, it was hard in the way that more like clinical knowledge was harder to get. These are healthy people. Like, you kind of had to go looking for the studying, and
Right.
I did. But yeah, for the most part, babies just came out. It was a great experience. And then when I came here to Arizona, still great, healthy women that I adored and was so grateful to for allowing me in their space. But the midwife I worked with was much more medical. And so I got to see more of that side of things, which was new. And I think just an important part of my perspective now, since for the most part, that's midwifery, like today here in this country.
Right.
So it was kind of funny that it took me a bunch of years to see it. But in Chicago, the midwives are underground. Unless you're a CNM, that's just the way it is. So I was kind of exposed to all of that at once, the politics and, all of that good stuff.
So, and now you call yourself a traditional midwife. I know you were a licensed midwife and you decided to give back and lay down your license for various reasons. I don't know if you want to get into this right now, but how do you see yourself in this whole, variety of different birth workers, right, birth witnesses, however people call themselves?
Sure.
Where do you feel you put yourself?
Well, yeah. So I went on to get a midwifery license here in Arizona. So I was a licensed midwife here for several years. And then, right, I had quite the legal battle with the state. And that's a story that's told on my podcast and online. It's not even that terribly interesting. It's sort of just like the run-of-the-mill midwife story. Not a bad outcome, just when you don't follow the rules that the state sets, that's often a problem, especially if you're not willing to kind of lay down for them.
And
so
obey. Exactly.
Yeah. And many midwives, and, I hear this all the time, this little rabbit hole, but many midwives working for the state end up just lying all the time. Like, that's how they manage their lives.
Or give up their practice, after all.
Yeah, right. So
which is really sad.
Right. So there's all these ways that midwives and women, right, are currently handling this dishonorable system. And I just couldn't participate in that anymore once it was really shown to me that's what it was. Because I went in just like most midwives do, especially younger, I think, more naive, perhaps, midwives. I went in thinking, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm going to serve the way I want. I can help more women if I have a license, kind of like all these essentially misconceptions about the way licensing works. I thought I could sort of beat the system. And I don't think that that's possible anymore. And anybody that wants to challenge me on that, I'm like usually up for it, because I feel like at some point you will have to choose. It is not a matter of if, it is just a matter of when. So it happened to me fairly early in my, career as a licensed midwife. I had only been licensed 2 years, I think. And then I spent the next 2.5 years fighting the state for a license I
Wow.
didn't want.
Oh my God. Crazy.
Yeah, but I talk about it probably in this similar way all the time now, that it was such a blessing. It was such a blessing to be given the opportunity to face my fears and to hear my own voice and to just admit it didn't fit. It didn't resonate. And that I was going to, I was going to live a lie and just live the kind of life I wouldn't be proud of if I stayed in that kind of system. I really couldn't serve the women I wanted to, and all the restrictions around licensing. So I don't regret it all. It happened. I think it was so graceful. And I think, honestly, if more people were sort of put in that line of fire, we'd probably have more midwives, more people deciding what's best for them, instead of hiding behind something that's not working. So I was glad to be given the opportunity to be truthful with myself and ultimately with the state. I ended up sending them a letter that's online somewhere that just said, you don't own me, you don't own women, you don't own birth, here, take it. And I have no interest in serving you anymore. You don't understand birth and you don't really seek to understand it. So, that came again after many years of thinking I wanted something I didn't. And they tried all kinds of things. They tried to settle. I don't think it was ultimately the kind of thing where they were going to take my license. It was just this power struggle that they were in to prove a point, which was, another element of wanting to get out of that. So,
So
after
may I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
What you did to me, for me, should rather say, at your conference was exactly that. You actually, or the whole conference, made me aware that I'm at a point in my life where I have to make this decision. Because when you had this panel of mamas with breech babies there, and I think it was 8 or 10 different moms, that all had pregnancies with breech babies, and they weren't able to either birth in a hospital without getting a cesarean section or find a licensed midwife that would care for them. And it was just like this amazing, mind-opening, mind-blowing moment for me where I was like, oh my fucking God, I do not want to serve the state. I just don't. I want to serve women. I want to make sure that, I can be there for women and I'm not oppressed and imprisoned by rules that someone else put on me. And it was really like a great learning lesson that I got from you in that conference. So thank you for that.
You're so welcome. And, thanks to these women who, yes, there was a mom who had her first baby breech here with us. And then actually there was a variety on that panel. I don't even remember them all. Somebody that had a special scar cesarean, and somebody who had been dropped by her midwives at 42 weeks. And, all women that didn't fit in the box.
Right.
That
pressure.
licensed.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I'm always honored and amazed by these women that are smart enough, maybe not right away, but eventually they find their way into realizing that there are more choices, or should be more choices, because ultimately I do think it's up to the women. This isn't something midwives are going to solve.
Yes.
You could have a bunch of people on here together and we could respectfully argue the benefits and the, risks and the negativity of licensing. We're probably not ever going to agree. People have all the reasons why they think it's working. So I think we really do need to turn back to the women, which I think is where Indie Birth comes in, and say, what do you want? What do you need? What are you looking for? Because our jobs are obsolete without them anyway, if we consider what we do,
Totally.
even a job, I guess.
Yeah. Wow. Whoa, whole new perspective on midwifery and licensing. I actually just had a wonderful interview with Jackie Blue, and she is making a documentary about beautiful birth stories, and she is, really shedding light on the midwifery model of care, compared to the medical establishment and hospitals. And it's really interesting that we can now today go with you a little deeper into that midwifery model of care and ask the question, okay, which resource should we actually trust, or who is there to, respect us the way we need to be respected? Do I need to really choose a midwife that, actually serves the state, or should I rather, care all for myself, or what is the deal, right? So, and Dr. Stuart Fishburne actually said it today really nicely. He commented when I said, Dr. Stu says home birth is safe. He's like, well, home birth is not for everyone, but the choice to make this decision is for everyone. And I think that's what you just said as well. And I think that's a really good point to make. So maybe we can go a little deeper in the different resources that women have when they finally make the decision, okay, I don't actually want to birth in the hospital. I do want to be, in the care of a midwife and respected by the midwifery model of care, which believes that birth is natural and normal, and, when a woman is healthy and happy. So prenatal care. That's a big thing in midwifery model of care. So you inspired me with your podcast so much. I don't know if you followed me a little bit, but I'm traveling all over the world right now, and while I'm pregnant, so it was really hard for me, like, oh my God, who's going to take care of me, right? And then Maryn Green came flowing in my consciousness with her podcast that says, bring back prenatal care to yourself. What is prenatal care, and how can we take care of ourselves, and what is really good self-care in pregnancy? And you inspired me a lot to take really good care of myself. So maybe you can tell us a little more about your perspective there.
Yeah, I have a lot to say. Well, the journey through like truly doing my own prenatal care has been a journey, right? So I've had many children. I've been an apprentice midwife. I've worked with midwives. And it wasn't until my, 7th baby that I had been through all this like crazy state stuff, right? I had dropped my license. And so I was practicing midwifery in this new way that I was trying to make more sense of, in a way that I could communicate it to people. So in other words, I saw all the state stuff happen. I knew what I was supposed to do during prenatal care. I got fined by the state for not writing in someone's weight each time I saw them. And so I had these ideas and ways I had been taught to do prenatal care. And then once I released all that, I had to turn to myself. I had to turn inward in my own pregnancy and say to myself, what is this all about? Like, what are we actually doing? Totally. Why are we doing it? If we choose to do any clinical skills, do we even know what we're looking for?
That's good questions. Yes.
Right. So It was like this self journey, really, like a very long journey. But I started the podcast with her pregnancy, so with my 7th pregnancy. And the very first episode starts, I think, with prenatal care, and that's kind of like the whole first chunk. So I was literally investigating that for myself and then trying to find words to put it out to the world, because I felt like I didn't hear anybody else talking about it. Totally. And even midwife friends I had weren't really doing this. Like, they were looking to each other, oh, will you feel my belly, and will you do these things for me? So I didn't really see anybody sort of acting the way that I want women to.
Or that's why I was so appealed to it, because I was like, holy moly, I've never heard that from anyone else. And it makes so much sense. If I'm like truly listening to what resonates to me, it's like, it totally resonated to me the moment I heard that. Yeah.
Totally. Well, and then I'm not going to go into all the detail, but just for anybody that's listening that's interested, reading more about prenatal care and where this idea came from and the schedule of appointments. And, there's a lot of history and backstory there that I needed to know. And so the short story is, right, it's a holdover for the medical model. We can't really assume that midwives probably before that were, going over with their flow charts and doing all of these things to women. I would assume that midwives were just spending time with women and getting to know them and having dinner with them. And, it wasn't this contrived thing that we've made it out to be, where women, show up at a specific time and they have their 15 minutes and they walk away feeling like, oh, well, I'm healthy because the doctor said I am, or whatever it is. Something
it's
has
kind of controlling too.
Yeah, it's contrived, it's controlling. And my biggest issue with it is, why would we be confused that women are having these births that are so traumatic and aren't very powerful? It's because they can't step into that in the labor room. They're not prepared to. They haven't practiced.
Totally.
They don't think they know any better. They've given up their power in pregnancy the whole time.
Oh my God. Yes. You bring
Right?
it exactly in words. Yes. Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So
if we're outsourcing all our care and all our responsibility and therefore all our power.
Yep. All of it. And it's a lot of responsibility in a way. I mean, in one way, it's sort of simple to be pregnant for most women most of the time.
Yep.
We're caring for our physical health or emotional health in maybe a more detailed way than we do in normal life. But, we're not probably going through the checklist that a practitioner would.
But
if we
who
don't
could
feel
take
well,
better care? Who could
Right.
take better care of myself than myself?
Right.
That's the question that you really brought up in me, where it's that's so true. Why would I trust anyone else on the outside and some ultrasound and some genetic test and all of that? I am the one that's so connected and the closest connected to this being more than anyone else.
Of course. Of course. And I would argue too that all of the outside tools would and could and should still be available to women doing this kind of care, because they might decide they want this or that. And that would come from a place of, being really conscious about those choices and having the intention of still making that choice on their own. So I don't inherently think that, taking your blood pressure or even getting an ultrasound is bad. It's just, is that what this woman wants? Is that what this woman needs? Rather than, is she being told that this is how it goes? Those are two completely different perspectives. So it's
she
just
doesn't know better because it's just routine for everyone.
Right.
That's the
right.
thing.
So routine is a huge topic, and I have a bunch of podcasts on that. But prenatal care is just a great example of that. So if women aren't questioning these things, then all kinds of things are happening out of that. Maybe they're being labeled high risk, or, they're being dropped from even midwifery care sometimes based on test results or a number. Nobody's looking at the complete person. And so I think we have to do that for ourselves with the support systems that we have, our partners, our friends, our family. Of course, I'm a midwife. My idea and my hope is that I can support women in a way that does feel really well-rounded, and that other women, other midwives, can be inspired to drop this medical model when it's not serving and truly serve women in this way that they need to be served. So I think it can look lots of different ways, and there isn't one way to go about it. It's just would be up to you.
Yeah. Again, here it's important to have the choice, right? And to know that there is choice. For me, it was a clear moment where I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know I have this choice before. And that's exactly choice that I want to, right? So I think it's really empowering just to know that there's different models out there, and we have at the end the power to decide which one is best for us.
Yeah. And like I said, ideally really being aware and looking for transparency, which is hard in these models, so women can really find where they need to go. Because I agree with Dr. Stu. I don't think everybody should have a home birth, but every woman could, in theory, have really powerful prenatal care. Even if she's checking in with a doctor and going for appointments, there's so much, right? I think it's Anne Fry that said in her book, prenatal care is what you do most of the time. It's something you do for yourself. So that 10-minute appointment, that's not prenatal care. Prenatal care is the 99% of the time you're there in your house feeding yourself food and, you know, whatever it is. So anybody can be inspired to do that. And I think what better tool for mothering is there than learning how to really take care of yourself?
Oh my God. Yes.
Well, because you're holding a baby eventually, and if you've given it all away, I've seen it. And, you know, women just look at their babies and they're like, I'm not even connected to what's happening here. And they're looking for advice from everybody else. So it becomes a lot harder, you know, if you contract out your power.
Yeah. I like how you said it's actually like, you know, taking on responsibility in your pregnancy, you know, if that is with assistance or support or all by yourself, it's your own choice. But, you know, taking back that responsibility will then help women as later on as they're going through labor and birth as well to, you know, take on responsibility for their own experience and, you know, not just because they don't know, give that power away to let other people decide over them. So I think that's a good point to make. And then continuing into motherhood, right? It's like the same thing. Everyone else wants to tell you what's right and what's wrong. At some point you need to like know what you're doing or you never know really what you're doing, right? You're just winging it, but you need to be able to like stand your ground and all of that.
Right. It's confidence building. It's intuition building, both of which are so valuable and need to be practiced. Right. So often pregnant women say, well, I don't feel that connected to this baby or something along those lines. It's like, well, but we're not really told that that's a thing. Like we're looking in from the outside with ultrasound and all of these things that take women away from those kind of connections. So it's okay. It's normal to maybe have to work at that a little bit. It's normal to like get that connection lined up. So when you're in labor, you're the one to say, this is happening or that's happening. I mean, I say to people all the time, no one will ever know more about you and your baby than you do. Right. Like I'm not God. I can, right? So as midwives, even we can be with women at their births and be attentive and be intuitive and whatever, have all the tools, but we're not them. We don't have that inside line to what needs to be known. And so that's where I think it's so valuable. Like, don't women want that? Maybe some don't, you know, it's maybe feels like a huge responsibility and easier to put that off on someone else. Like they're responsible for my birth to be safe. They're responsible for me to come out of this okay. No, we are. And the moment I think we get pregnant, we accept that to a certain extent, whether it's conscious or, you know, unconscious.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Besides having all that intuition and that responsibility and that power for yourself, there's a few factors though that are pretty, how would I say, influential to the outcome of your birth experience, right? And I would say one of them is the set and the setting, right? So who are you working with and where are you working? So if it's a whole difference to have a birth in a hospital with a doctor, OBGYN, and the medical system, or being with a midwife at home, at a home birth, right? So maybe from your perspective, why is it so important for women to choose between these two things to influence their birth outcome?
Well, because it's not actually a matter of location or doctor so-and-so or midwife so-and-so. It's a matter of deep belief. They are representing two different belief systems. I would say at this point in time, two different paradigms. And that's what we're choosing. So I think that is what I see as one of the biggest confusions out there.
That. The paradigm. We choose the paradigm that we want to birth.
Yeah. And that's when I say even like there isn't a wrong one. There isn't a bad one. There's simply this belief system, which is the, technocratic model, as Robbie Davis Floyd would say. And what is that based on? It's based on the woman as machine, the baby as product. Birth is scary. Birth is chaos. Birth is unpredictable. It needs to be controlled. It must be managed. So, there really are people that believe that. Women believe that. People believe that. They've grown up in a way where that's their reality and they haven't shed that. They haven't worked through that. So for those people, truly, birth in the hospital, because that will fit your belief system and you will get what you want. And so those are right? Those are the stories where people come out and they frame it in a way that, oh, they were saved. Okay. But that
rescued.
fits that system. Right. But that is exactly what they signed up for. So, I think conversely then we have the belief system where birth is normal, birth is natural, women are powerful. There is no one above us. There is no need for anyone above us. We may choose to have someone there as support or consult. Birth is not medical, all of the things that you and I believe. So if someone is resonating with that, or I'd say even curious, there's lots of women that they're pregnant for the first time. They don't know yet what they believe. But the more they get into hearing these kind of things, there's something. And I see it all the time here when we do free workshops. There's something that brings them here. There's something that, would bring someone to listen to this conversation. Yes. Right? And they might know all the bad stories. Their friends have not had great experiences, but there's something deep within them that resonates with this belief system. So those are the people that start to walk down that path and do that research and call in what they need to call in. So that's where I think it's not really anything we can convince anybody of. Yes, we can educate people. Yeah, we can. I mean, if someone wants to sit here and tell me how, I don't get this a lot, but how scary birth is, or they have a partner that feels that way, that's something that needs to be, worked through on their end if they choose. But nothing I say, not home birth is safe, nothing will matter. And so I think that's the biggest.
It's kind of like a remembering that comes up where it's like, oh my God, that just feels really right. Whatever I heard there, whatever I saw there, it just made sense. And then I can take, initiative and go down that path. But Maryn, it got to be said out loud. And as I said, I would have not gone down the path that I would have if you would have not inspired me to do so through speaking out loud, right? Yeah. So I think there is a responsibility for women as well to share their stories, their beautiful, powerful, empowering, positive stories to encourage women and to tell them like it can be different, right? Totally. So that we can maybe, if we want to, stay in the paradigm, but maybe if we want to break free from that paradigm and choose a whole new paradigm, and that's what indie birth is all about.
Yeah, for sure. I know we haven't really talked about indie birth yet. But yeah, that is exactly, I think what it's about is having a literal platform, an online platform where that is the energy I hope we're putting out and what we try to admit to the universe. Just that, like we all have what we need within us. You are supported in that. You are powerful. But then here practically, right, we have all these resources and classes and the kind of things that I think women of today need often to connect the dots, or they want to know more, which is great, or they have partners that want to know more. I don't know that we have like a huge percentage of women not interacting with stuff and just being super confident right off the bat. Like that's awesome, but I don't see a whole lot of that. It seems like most people have an evolution of kind of where they need to go, who they need to talk to, what they need to learn. And then really it's passing through your own experience as well that gives you confidence and teaches you so much. So it's been an amazing project and growth. Indie Birth's been around for over 10 years, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah. Initially it wasn't really anything sort of special just because.
So tell me a little bit about Indie Birth. So I went to your conference and it was a few years back. So Indie Birth was around for a few years already, but I personally have never heard about it. As you just said, I did my own journey as a birth worker, doula, being interested in all of that, going through hospital births, home births, all the stuff to then find myself at Indie Birth. And here I was. And so tell me a little bit more, what is Indie Birth all about? And how is the evolution for you as well, as the leader of indie birth, or I don't know how you want to call yourself.
Yeah, well, like I said, I won't bore you with a super long history, but it's about 10 years old. We had started as like a print magazine way back when I was a student. We had moved to a website shortly after, but it was really vanilla. I mean, I was a student. I didn't really know yet about most of these things. I didn't really have like a clear sense of my own self or direction or truth or anything like that. So it was a very benign kind of site just with birth stories and such. So it wasn't anything that
But it was always
anybody,
called indie birth.
yeah, it was. And we've
Yeah.
had, indiebirth.com for 10 years. So yeah, that's how we started. And then, yeah, fast forward over the last bunch of years, really after that whole debacle that I had with the state here, that's when I feel like things really shifted for indie birth, because it was easier to find that place where I was being me and had something. I think, we all have something unique, but I think it's finding that voice where we can speak it. So all of that experience gave me so much material. Like, I didn't know what to do with everything I wanted to say, and everything I wanted women to sort of know or be offered. The politics, for one, was huge, and that's still a huge piece of who we are, is talking about autonomous midwifery and what that means. And I've lived it. So, there's nothing more real than that. I've lived that story, and I know what I see, and I know what is possible, I think, for midwives and for women. So it's felt like a really authentic journey to just start creating podcasts. Like I said, I started that. My daughter is 4.5, and I started the podcast with her pregnancy. So we have
Wow, I
nearly...
didn't even know that's already so long ago. It sounded, for me, it was like you were like on this path with me right now.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, and if you keep listening, you're going to, hit all the points in your pregnancy.
I did. Yeah. So far I caught up with you.
Totally. Well, and it goes on, because even my last pregnancy, I recorded different ones that maybe I had missed. So you'll get to them, but they're kind of like different pregnancies for me. But yeah, people often tell me like, oh, it feels like we're doing this together. And like you said exactly what I was thinking.
Totally.
I'm pretty honest like that, and a podcast has been like just a fun way, I say, even sometimes, to create like memories for myself or my children, if I'm talking about them or their birth stories. So yeah, the podcast kind of was the beginning of indie birth, maybe exploding in the certain kind of way that I didn't necessarily like expect. Uh-oh, why is my phone ringing? Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, so the podcast was the beginning, and then Margot, of course, who people may or may not know, is like the co-creator of Indie Birth presently, which is awesome. She was my student, my apprentice for many years before she, moved on and is now a midwife in her own right somewhere else. But we work on Indie Birth together, and so truthfully, it was that partnership as well. It wasn't just me doing these podcasts. That was the good piece of it, but the other piece was this partnership and her talents and the way that she adds so much to what we do in midwifery that we never not have a project. There's always a billion things going on. And so,
I know you guys are always busy. That's amazing, though. You're constantly putting out new things, though, too. It's like, that seems like exhausting and amazing at the same time. Like, I don't know how you do that with 8 kids and teaching other midwifery students and going to births. And I'm like, is she like 7 people at the same time? I don't know.
Yes, I hear that a lot, and I would just say my husband is really supportive and awesome, and he's always home, and my kids are home. We homeschool, and so we're always all together.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I mean, without it sounding like too Sedona and out there, I think also when you're aligned with whatever vision it is that you have, it comes really easy and naturally, and it doesn't really feel like work.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure
I saw this wonderful little picture the other day where it said hustle, and it was like cut through, right? And then it says align.
Yeah.
That's it right there. Yeah. If you're aligning with your own truth, what resonates with you, then it doesn't necessarily feel like work. It feels like fun and just calling, I'd say, huh?
Yeah, and you're usually lucky enough to just manifest the right people and the right experiences. And, even as a midwife here, the women and the experiences I have had have changed so much since being licensed. I feel like now the people are just different. They're ready in a different way. They're wanting the responsibility. They're wanting to, take control of prenatal care. They're just wanting something else. And so that's taught me so much. And I feel so grateful to be able to be involved and witness these kind of births where, I'm not like the midwife on a pedestal orchestrating someone's birth or experience. I couldn't even do that anymore. So I'm grateful that there are people that actually want that. Just selfishly, it's still so nice to support women and see birth and be involved in a way that feels really good.
Nice. I actually saw something really inspiring today in your group, and that was a mom that had a home birth after 7 cesarean. And I was just like, oh my goddess, what the fuck? Like, that's just like amazing. And that brings me to the question, I work as well with women that had traumatic experiences in the past and that just like made the shift, how a lot of women made, like, oh, I had a birth in the hospital and it was just not how I wanted it to go. And now I'm really getting into my own research and learning to find my own voice and learning about my own body. And I want a different experience. So that's something that I thought was really inspiring about indie birth was that, through breaking free from that paradigm of licensure, you are able to serve women in a way that other licensed midwives can't save or serve. However, women, right? For example, if you are over your due date, right, which is like a myth, 42 weeks, and then women explode and everything is a mess. So that's one of the things that you say. If a woman is healthy, I totally support her. Preach babies, right? Or they're upside down like I was. Please don't cut them out. They want to come out with their butt. I just tell you.
Right.
Or women that have that are ruled out through other measurements that, as you said, VBAC, for example, like having a vaginal birth after cesarean. So these are all things that you support women in.
Yeah, I don't even necessarily think in that criteria anymore. To me, it's more important that I feel connected to somebody, that, it's the right match in other ways. I don't want or need to be, oh, I can't find anybody to attend my twin birth. Okay, well, let's talk. I don't know that I'm the person for you either, just because I can.
Right.
So yeah, it's still about, is it the right match? And in my view, is this woman accepting the responsibility for whatever this is? Sometimes it's just political risk, right? We're not even talking about health risk or whatever. We're just talking about no one wants to deal with that. No one wants to deal with a breech baby, especially in a state where, there's really strict rules around it. And so if I need anything, I need the woman to feel confident with her situation and not be looking for someone to save her. Honestly, it's the kind of woman that's usually like, well, I'll do it myself then. I don't feel like I need anyone in that way, but I would love support and I would love to have someone that has knowledge. So yeah, it's sad that these criteria have kind of wrecked the psyche of so many women. I had someone just this past weekend, just like someone I don't know, come through and want to talk. And she said to me right off the bat, I don't know if I could even have a home birth. She was 38. So, we talked through that and I just kept asking her. I was like, so what else? What else? Is there anything in your history? There was absolutely nothing. All it was is that they told her she was too old. And so she was already like, had that on her mind as like a thing that she would need to find a special person for. So anyway, I think
I'm totally a geriatric mom too.
Totally. Me too. For years.
Terrible.
It
Okay, but
is.
that makes a lot of sense, right? That you say like it's not necessarily because I decide to support women that are out of the range or out of the range of normal, what the medical system says is normal or not normal. It's more like I need to have a woman that is totally willing to take responsibility, and we just vibe and it resonates, and we know that we both take responsibility for our own experiences.
Sure. And something like a breech baby is a great example. Like there are lots of reasons that a baby might want to be that way. It's not up to me to figure out for someone. I can tell her all the reasons. Some would be more favorable than others, but ultimately I feel like that woman needs to say, I know this is right. I know this is good for me and this baby, and this is what I'm going to do because this is where I feel safest. If it's simply like, oh, I don't want a C-section, but then she's scared to birth a vaginal breech at home, then that's not, to me, the kind of situation that I'd want to be in. And I think as midwives too, we need to have good boundaries. And if we're not comfortable in serving someone, it's nothing personal. It doesn't mean we think their birth will be bad or anything like that. It's just simply, I am not the person for you. So I think, especially as midwives that serve kind of on the outside, we're the renegades, right?
Yes.
Which is like a great and funny and horrible term. But
Totally.
honestly, like I think with that comes the responsibility to have a lot of clarity on your own boundaries and not just be the one that's like, oh, I'll go to any birth. I'll take any woman. I don't feel that way. I feel like there are specific women I would be really great at serving and others that there's someone better for them. And that's also, that ties into another issue, I think, which is just transparency and everybody out there that's doing their thing, just being super honest about their experience and who they think they can serve and who they can't, knowing that there's always somebody, there's always the right person. You don't have to be the right person for everybody.
Yes. Oh, I
And you
think
can't
that's
be.
super important. Yes, you can't be, and it would be actually a crime if you would try to to please everyone. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I see that, I don't know in your community or people watching how, I know a lot of midwives feel this way, but I'm not sure how it looks to the women sometimes that there's many midwives who it's just so competitive. They don't want to say, oh, well, so-and-so might be someone you want to talk with or anything like that. It's a very restrictive kind of energy. And so I find that hard to deal with because when women don't know they have other options, then sometimes they don't know they have other options.
Totally.
Wound up at so many births here of women who never knew I was even around. The only reason they ever called was something came up at the end, and they happened to be really cool women that were matches. But you know what I mean? They had no idea. It was only when they were told, we can't help you anymore.
Totally.
So that's
Okay, so we're back here on the interview. It took us a week to reconnect. Internet in Spain is not that easy, so thank you so much, Maryn from Indie Birth, to come back here with me. I have a few more questions to round this up, and one more question is, what is a indie birth? How do you define it, and what does it mean for women?
I should go pull out my t-shirt over there so I don't get it wrong. But
by the way, I love your tattoo that I see. That's like the new indie birth tattoo, right?
It is. That's the
beautiful.
New design, and I have a new one on this hand too.
Ooh, I love it. Damn.
Thank you. Yeah, this one at our retreat. We had a tattoo artist there. It was really awesome.
Cool.
Yeah. So the definition of an indie birth has been and still is that it's a birth experience arising from making choices in alignment with your own truth, following your own path, autonomous and free.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So just to clarify that, because that comes up a lot lately for me, is how is it different to an unassisted or a free birth?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I feel like we're gaining more clarity in explaining that because for a while people were kind of overlapping terms. Indie birth means an unassisted birth. And it doesn't mean that at all. It just means that you're making the right choices for you in whatever birth experience it needs to be for you to feel like you're in charge. So it's actually not associated with free birth or any sort of birth. It's just purely from the woman's perspective of how autonomous she is in her choices. So I know it's like maybe more complicated, but I think it's an important distinction to make because there's so much buzz nowadays around kind of like judgment around those sorts of things. Yeah. Like home birth's awesome. Women should have their babies at home. But then you get into this free birth thing, and I feel like that's not super clear either. And there's women choosing that for all sorts of reasons, and some maybe we identify with personally, and there's other reasons that I definitely don't identify with. So we didn't want to really align with that there was a right way. The only right way is what comes from within. And I think that allows people to walk the path they're on and to explore and to grow without feeling like, they're doing something because they don't want to be judged or, they want to be the cool kid or whatever it is. That's not really important, I don't think.
Yeah, I think a big thing is to actually letting go of that judgment in birth, to feel judged, because you probably will feel judged. Even if you're deciding to have a home birth, you're only going to be 1% of all women in America, right? So there will be a lot of other people maybe having different opinions about it, but I really like what you say. It's like it should be your choice, right, to how you decide. But indie birth definitely does mean outside the hospital setting. Is that right?
No, it doesn't have to. I think most of the people that take our course or are aligned with what we believe or et cetera, most of them, to be honest, are having their babies at home. A lot of them are having babies by themselves or with traditional midwives. But I don't think it precludes somebody from having a hospital birth, honestly, especially if that's kind of like the way things wind up. That might not be their goal, but I've, served women who wound up at the hospital, not because that was their choice, but because that was what was needed.
Right.
And they still had a really powerful experience and owned their experience. So, you can be traumatized at a free birth. There's no reason that you can't.
Totally.
If you're doing it for someone else, or if you're not entirely clear on where the power lies.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just that women own their experiences and be as powerful as they can in making conscious choices, and kind of like whatever happens after that, I think there's a lot that we just don't have control over.
Right. Thank you. That's it seems like you guys took some intention to really become clear on what that actually is, because it is such a fine line between all these different things, how people define birth. And it shouldn't be like that hard, right? It's like so easy. It's like birth, right? It's just like one act. But like we're making it so complicated.
Right. I mean, like we do a free workshop often, and I have all kinds of people come to that, right? So hospital births and people that have had cesareans, all kinds of things. And what I love for them to walk away with is there is actually a way that birth works. Like there is a way that our bodies know how to do it. And then they ask those other questions. They start to ask themselves, well, how could I get that? Where could I get that? And so they figure that out. But you can't just say to somebody, you should have your baby at home, because around here anyway, you could wind up with a home birth with a midwife and have a totally medicalized experience where you don't own anything and you're completely powerless. Totally. So I think those days of simplicity are gone. It's a deeper issue. It's not location. It's what people believe and like where the power is, where it lies.
Right. So it's more like a women-centered, women-guided, free, like informed choices. Oh, getting complicated. You made it very clear, so we leave it with this. Okay, my almost last question for you is, if you would leave this planet tomorrow, you're taken off in a spaceship and you say Maryn is gone, what would be your last message to leave with women and people on this planet Earth?
I think just that love is the guiding force behind all of this work that we do. And why it's beautiful to see women be pregnant and birth babies, and why it's beautiful to go home to my children. It's because love really is all that matters. So I think when we find ourselves, especially in the birth community, making it about anything else, it's not about midwives. It's not about what sort you are or what school you went to,
Right.
or if you had a free birth. It doesn't matter. Just what are the choices that you can make for yourself and your baby and your family in love and not fear. And that would be the message I think we all need to hear every day, myself included.
I love that. Definitely. It's a daily battle, love versus fear, right? So it's our choice to decide for that one. Thank you for that. Okay, now I want to know all about Indie Birth's midwifery program, any upcoming workshops. How can women, people in general, connect with you, learn from you, spread your message, all of that? Tell me.
Okay, so indiebirth.org is our main website, and all of the podcasts are on iTunes, so you can listen to them all there. Actually, they're all on the site as well. It's indiebirth.org/podcast archives, because iTunes actually doesn't keep them all, and we have close to 150. So if you want to catalog, right, you'd start there. And indiebirthmidwiferyschool.org is a separate website that we have from Indie Birth, and that outlines the 2-year program that we're currently offering. We're about to take in a new group of women to start in about a month.
Now in July, right? Yes.
Yeah, they start July 13th, and come fall, we will be enrolling again to start next summer. So that is happening, and other than that, we have workshops kind of happening.
I just want to say you always have awesome, interesting workshops that, like you can always learn and expand your mind so much and learn new things that I've never heard about. I'm like, wow, these guys are pretty ahead there. So definitely check out the website if you want to stay ahead on Indie Birth, Midwifery School, the podcasts, and anything else that's going on with Indie Birth. Maryn.
Yeah. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And
totally. You guys are online, and you have really nice groups too. You have a Indie Birth Nutrition group as well, right? That's pretty exciting as well. I'm actually part of this group too, and I got some pretty nice tips there, and just good community of all like-minded and free-thinking women.
Yeah, for sure. The community has grown so much, and so we're very grateful to that and love to see the huge amounts of women that are still coming every day and, want to connect and find these things out for themselves. It's pretty awesome.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for taking your time, a second time, to come on here with me tonight and talking about all the good things. I'm really excited to share this and to spread this message and get more people, excited about Indie Birth and empowering birth in general, so that they can take back and own birth and have a good experience for themselves and for their babies, their families, and for society.
Agreed. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, ladies, for joining us to this great interview. If you enjoyed this, please follow the Liberated Birth Movement on Facebook or subscribe to our channel. If you have more questions how to apply these ideas to your pregnancy and birth, schedule a call and we'll get you clear on what you want and how to get it. meetme.so/liberatedbirth. meetme.so/liberatedbirth. Always remember, birth belongs to women.